We'll call our meeting to order, and Jeremy was going to lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jeremy. Roll call, please, Yana.
Councilmember Johnson,
Here.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Here.
Mayor Long,
Here.
and
right.
right now, Councilmember Losi is currently absent.
All right. Hopefully he'll be able to join us, and you just mark it down. We have some presentations and a new employee introduction. So who is going to introduce our new account clerk?
I will be doing that. So good evening, Council. I would like to introduce our new account clerk to Haley Richardson. This position is the first point of contact for the Finance Department and City Hall. Customer service is an important role of this position, and Haley comes to the city having over 5 years of customer service experience, most recently working for Shots Coffee. Haley is local and graduated from Fortuna Union High School. We are extremely pleased to have her as part of our finance team. She has already shown a calm and collected demeanor, working with customers on some difficult questions that even some of our seasoned employees would have a difficult time answering. And she's quickly picking up all the aspects of the job. So we're really pleased. And Haley, I'll turn it over to you if you want to say anything.
You're muted, Haley.
Good.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, I'm Haley. I just wanted to say thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really enjoy my job so far. And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun, learning a lot. And yeah, thank you guys.
Welcome, Haley.
Thank you.
All right, we have a presentation on Prop 68 projects by our Parks and Recreation Director, Cameron Mull. And there's Mike Losi.
I'm here.
Hello.
I made it.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. It's Cameron here, Parks and Rec Director. Sienna, if I can share my screen, that would be great. Okay. Got a little quick PowerPoint presentation for you all here. Can everybody hear me okay and see the PowerPoint, the slides?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so I just want to give you an update. We recently submitted some grant applications using Prop 68 funds, and I just wanted to give you an update on that project as well as some future Prop 68 funded projects. Again, these are Parks and Water Bond in 2018 that was voted in by the taxpayers to support water and parks projects throughout the state. And they've had a number of competitive grants over the last few years, as well as some per capita funding that goes to special districts and city entities that we've received, which I will go into here shortly. So this is kind of a combo partnership here between the city of Fortuna and the Roner Community Recreation Park District for the project here that I will mention next. So we had two grant projects or grant applications. One was the Rural Recreation and Tourism grant, and the other one was the Regional Park Program grant. So the city was eligible to apply for the RRT grant, and the Roner Rec District was not able to apply for that. And then on the flip side of that, the Roner Rec District was able to apply for the RPP grant, the Regional Park Program grant, but the city was not. The parameters for each of those grants were pretty much identical. So some of those parameters are there was $23.1 million in available funds throughout the state. There was no match required. Grant projects had to be for acquisition or development. Grant project range was between $200,000 and $3 million. The application deadline was this past January 20th. Like most of these competitive grants through Prop 68, there is a public outreach That is an essential component of the grant to just hear the feedback from the public and see what the public would like to see in any of these projects. The grants are points based in that, there are certain parameters that can gain you additional points. Unfortunately, this has hurt us in previous grants like the statewide park project, because we have already, for a small city, have a lot of park space, as well as our medium household incomes being close to their highest threshold. Awards for these grant applications that were submitted on January 20th will be announced in spring 22. I put that in quotations because they're typically, a couple seasons behind with their announcements. So if we hear summer or fall, that's probably more realistic. The project, if awarded, would have to be completed by June 30th, 2025. And so we basically submitted the identical grant project on behalf of the Rona Rec District and behalf of the city in order to basically double our chances in achieving these grant awards, which are extremely competitive. And $23.1 million is not a whole lot of money compared to the statewide park program, which had, I think it was $540 million. So this would be a pretty competitive grant. So we figured we'd double our chances by applying for both. The project that we identified was the River Parkway project. So this is the project location. You can see, if you can see my cursor here, there's a little kind of triangular slice here near the River Lodge off of Riverwalk Drive. That slice in itself is a little over 7 acres. The city is working with the private landowner in negotiations to purchase the entire lot. And Merritt, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's 60 some acres. But tonight we're just talking about the project here in the 7 acre parcel and developing that into.
Cameron, of this parcel, we're only looking at acquiring the park piece at this point.
Okay. So we're just talking about this 7 acre piece. So through the public outreach, we found that through the desire of the public in those meetings to create a new park in this 7 acre plus location. We felt like it was an ideal area for events, especially being close to Eel River Brewing Company and just the prime location of being near the river itself and that beautiful view over in that area. Of course, we wanted to have restrooms, a playground area to attract youth and families, a fenced dog park. That's usually a common theme in public outreach, but also more common in this scenario because we have the hotels there and a lot of people these days are traveling with their dogs. So we felt like it'd be nice to have a really close proximity, small dog park area for those folks. An art and interpretive area. Paved ADA accessible trails throughout. This is a very common theme. In fact, this is the #1 thing that we've heard throughout our public outreach process is that people really want to see hiking trails. Parking along Riverwalk Drive and access to the bathrooms, some river overlook areas, but mostly open space recreation. And as I mentioned, we're under negotiations with the private property owner. So this in the end is the conceptual design through that public outreach and has those specific amenities. I know the wording is a little bit small, so I'll just kind of point out some of those things I talked about. If you can see my cursor, we've got a parking area here that already exists. We've got parallel parking along Riverwalk Drive where you see those green dashes, if you will. We've got the bathroom over in this area. No cook shack or anything, just a simple prefab bathroom at the moment. A playground area. This here would be the Art and Interpretive Center. This oval shape would be the plaza area. So we could have bands playing and events happening, and that could kind of be the hub, the center of the activity for whatever that event might be. The nice thing also is that this could be an attraction for people who want to use the River Lodge as well as have an outdoor space. So they could have an event going on inside and an outdoor event going on simultaneously as well. And then you can see all the network of ADA trails throughout. Those would be, again, paved, ADA accessible. We've got the dog park here in the shaded area and some river overlook areas. You can see 3 overlooks there that would just provide some really nice views and a place to sit while walking. And then that stretch along this property here, if awarded, would also be paved as well, with hopefully the future to pave that all the way to the River Lodge for ADA access. Moving on. So that essentially is that project. And this was a $2.8 million project said and done, even just for some of those simple amenities and the paving and the parking spaces. So still a pretty significant ranged project, but still under that $3 million project range. Moving on now to other Prop 68 funds, and that's the per capita project. I know at least City Council, I'm not sure if the public's aware, but we were able to finally acquire and close escrow on this 8.4 acre parcel, which is adjacent to Newburgh Park. So the per capita funds essentially are funds, you still have to identify a project, but those are funds given by the state to both the city in this case and the Rona Rec District at $177,000 each. And we basically pooled our funds together so that we could acquire this property. So this was a partnership between the city and the Rona Rec District. So we're going from 24 to 32 acres. We're really excited about this project and then this expansion. So we're in the early stages of development and planning. And what some of that looks like is first to start, we were able to finalize and purchase the close escrow, I should say, and the end of December here this last year, combining our funds. That's the total amount of funding. And so for planning and development, we plan to do this in phases. We don't currently have the funds to just do this in one chunk unless some more competitive grants come about that we can apply for and be successful with. But so these are some of the items that we're going to have to kind of tackle as we consider opening that park as a space to the public, and that is having the proper drainage. And I'll go into some of these details when I pull up the next map, grading the area so there's more continuity between the existing park and this new park space, providing some additional parking. Again, the trails is really important to our citizens, so we want to make sure that we get a nice trail network that can connect with the rest of the park and potentially over to the McLean Foundation's campus where they've got the ponds and their extensive trail network there. We have gotten some feedback from the CCCs and commitment from the CCCs to at least build a paved trail to start when we're ready to do so. And then eventually we'd like to see some of the things that we saw through the public outreach through the statewide park program grant, and that is the skate park, really develop the soccer fields so we can have a couple regulation sized soccer fields, free up some of those baseball and softball fields. So for some fall ball, for some other leagues and sports teams. And then eventually some bathrooms there, cook shack area, picnic area. And then of course the small details like the lighting and irrigation. I know it's really hard to see this wording, but this was created by Brendan Bird, our city engineer, and kind of going over the topographic layout and some of the challenges as far as the drainage and the grading goes. So right now, if you can see my cursor, there's a fence right here that would eventually need to be removed, but especially this top half here, there is currently a drain that comes from Newburgh Road or across Newburgh Road, under Newburgh Road, all the way across the east end to the park, and then down, and then down along through this culvert to this drain, where then it drains under the field over to Strong's Creek. So we want to mitigate that drainage and potentially put that underground so we can level out that park a little bit instead of there being a ditch there or a drainage. And so just doing some grading, crowning the field so that when we are ready to open it up to the public, we get that water shedding off nice and smoothly, and eventually it's making its way into Strong's Creek. And then through that statewide park program, we're calling this our Newburgh Park Master Plan. This was the original conceptual design when we applied for that state park program grant, which we were not successful with, and nor was the Rona Rec District successful with their aquatic facility project. But in the end, we do know that this is close to what a master plan would look like for Newburgh Park. It is missing the bike park, which we've decided since that we want that to be a permanent feature of the parks. But this does include some of those features that I mentioned eventually that we'd like to be able to include in Newburgh. So the 2 regulation soccer fields, additional parking. This calls for, I think it says 81 additional parking spaces. You've got the picnic area and the cook shack with the bathrooms, the ADA trail. It's difficult to see, but we want to be able to connect all of these recreational features with ADA trails. So there's connectivity between all the features. And then of course, in the bottom corner here, we've got the skate park, which we know the community would really enjoy. So ultimately, this is, the current goal for the skate park, the Newburgh Park, if you included the bike park. So I didn't want to take up a whole lot of time, but I wanted to just kind of bring those two projects to your attention, and that we're working on those and waiting to hear back from the state on the RRT and RPP projects for the River Parkway. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that City Council or anyone else might have.
Thank you, Aaron. Does anyone from the council have questions? Aaron, can you, or Cameron, can you stop sharing your screen so I can see the people?
Yep.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anybody, questions or comments? I'm not seeing anything, so thank you, Cameron.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Hands up.
Cameron, on your Newburgh Park diagram there, I didn't see tennis courts or pickleball courts. I thought those were going to be incorporated there.
Yes, so I can share my screen again real quick and just go back to that conceptual design if you're all right with that, Sienna. So eventually, as part of this master plan, we do have, I don't know if you can see my screen, if you can see my cursor over here, Mike Losey, but we've got 2 outdoor basketball courts as well as 3 tennis courts over on the other side of the park. And those would be lined for pickleball. So eventually we'd like to minimize this soccer field if we were able to get 2 regulation fields here and create additional parking as well as basketball. So it's not currently in the design or planning phases. That's not to say that it couldn't be on this new parcel, but we've planned on at least originally putting it over on the existing park feature and just kind of making that an addition to the current park.
So it would be pretty close to where that one soccer field bordering the parking is at now.
Correct. Yeah. I don't know if you can see my screen or my cursor,
I can.
but
Yeah.
it's in this location here. And so basically right now you've got the parking lot. It's just, here's the entry into the park, and this is the edge of the parking lot. And this is all just one big open field. So we would minimize the size of that soccer field and create space for the additional parking spaces and the outdoor basketball and outdoor tennis / pickleball courts.
And what kind of a time frame do you have an idea there?
This is going to be kind of as funds become available. So we'll be reaching out for some more competitive grants because these are relatively large and extensive projects that won't be cheap. So just trying to utilize even Measure E funding for large projects such as this might make it difficult. So we'll probably have to rely on some competitive grants and maybe chip away at in phases using other sources of funding like Measure E for some of the smaller projects.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anyone else? All right, now I don't see any more hands. All right,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Our next presentation is a mid-year budget by Finance Director Aaron Finley.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. So I am going to share my screen as well and go through our mid-year budget presentation. So the intent of this report and discussion tonight is to review activities for the first half of this fiscal year, which is July through December of 2021, and provide a revised projection of revenues and expenditures to our fiscal year end, which is June 30th. This will enable staff and council to make more informed decisions through the remainder of this fiscal year, and as we begin to prepare fiscal year 2022-2023's budget. Additionally, the formal submittal of a review during the fiscal year provides an opportunity to identify and present any fiscal problem areas to the council and to recommend corrective action or additional funding if required. As part of this discussion, staff is not recommending making any budget adjustments to the current adopted budget, and any proposed supplemental budget adjustments by staff will come before council as a separate item for council consideration and approval. So before we dive into the fiscal year 21-22 mid-year's numbers, I wanted to review how our last fiscal year ended, which was fiscal year 2021. And so compared to fiscal year 19-20 revenues, recurring revenues, which include main contributors such as sales tax, property tax, and transient occupancy tax or hotel tax, we saw an increase of 9%. So that's this $521,000 amount. The general fund's largest revenue contributor, sales tax, increased by 20.7% year over year. And so that made up a large portion of that $521,000 increase. This level of increase for sales tax is obviously not sustainable year after year. And our sales tax consultants estimate that sales tax revenues will see a slight dip in the coming years before some moderate growth in the years ahead, between 3 and 4% each year. Overall, total sources of funds for the city's general fund increased by 28,485. And so that was less than 1% over fiscal year 1920. However, it is important to note that the sale of city-owned property at 280 12th Street occurred in fiscal year 1920, and that was for $875,000. So if we take that out of 1920's numbers, we would have seen total sources, total revenues increase by over 10% from 1920 to 2021. So some good news there. Moving down to total uses, salaries and benefits increased by approximately 1.7% or $65,000 from 1920 to 2021. And then capital outlay decreased by $802,000, which was due to the purchase of 2600 and 2650 Ronerville Road properties for the Police Department Operations Division building. And that cost about $700,000. So that was a big reason why that number went down so much. So kind of looking at the bottom line, some really good news. Fiscal year 2021 had a net surplus of $889,509, which was $790,000 more than fiscal year 1920. So staff will be making a recommendation on how best to utilize these surplus monies on a future business agenda item here later tonight. So now taking a look at where we're at this current fiscal year, our general fund revenues, property tax and property tax in lieu, the first two lines there, those come in 2 installments. We usually receive the first in January. We have yet to receive that from the county. We're anticipated to receive that any day now. And then the second one at the end of the fiscal year. So we don't have a really good idea of where those are projecting as of today. Moving down to sales tax, you can see mid-year adjustment of $161,800 over what was budgeted. And this comes after we had a meeting with our sales tax consultants, and that was a projection given by them, the $2,079,000. And the city will be receiving July 2021's to September 21's sales tax data on February 10th. And so we'll update the council with sales tax newsletter on those results when we get them. So transient occupancy tax or hotel tax, you can see a nice $100,000 gain there. Hotels are doing really well. So that's really encouraging. Franchise fees, that includes Recology, Sudden Link, those are, and PG&E, and so those are tracking as they should be. Business licenses, we saw an increase, so some new businesses coming in to town increased that amount slightly. Parks and Recreation, you can see a slight decline, and that's just due to park facility rentals being down over this last summer. The police department fees, you can see an $18,000, $100 increase, and that was for their county remote access network distribution being larger than originally anticipated. And then under other, the $361,000 increase, that is mainly attributable to $320,000 from Prop 68, what Cameron was just talking about, the per capita grant funds that we're expected to receive that are going to pay for that new parcel next to Newburgh Park. So overall, a nice, healthy, so far through this first half of the year, we're projecting $655,000 more than what we adopted through our budget. So on the other side, the expenditure side, this shows each department and how they're tracking so far through this year and where we're estimating for them to end this fiscal year at. And so you can see most of the departments are anticipated to go slightly over budget. And this is due to a number of different areas. The first is the potential updated employee organization MOU items have been included into these estimates. So that is the first kind of big item. The second big item is there have been a number of supplemental budget requests that have come before council in the last 6 months for the use of American Rescue Plan Act funds. And so that includes $45,000 included in the city council department for hybrid meeting chamber upgrade costs. It includes $120,000 here in the general government line for essential worker stipends. It includes $65,000 here under community development for planning and building software. And as a reminder, those will all be reimbursed through the American Rescue Plan Act funds and not paid through our regular general fund revenues. And then the last item here under Parks and Recreation is the purchase of the Newburgh Park parcel for about $320,000. And as I just said, those will be reimbursed through the Prop 68 per capita grant funds. So all told, we're estimating an increase over what we budgeted for expenditures of $564,979. So kind of putting those all together, you can see bringing in our revenues from the previous page or from 2 slides ago, plus the transfer from Measure E would leave us with total sources of just over 9 million. And then bringing in the operating expenses from the previous slide, as well as our CIP projects, which the $2 million includes the upgrades to the pod building, and those will all be paid for from our American Rescue Plan Act funds as well. And then the transfers to the Development Fund, River Lodge Fund, and Streets Fund puts us at $8,904,000 for total uses, which leaves us at a net source of $147,000. So about $140,000 more than what we anticipated with our adopted budget. So we're tracking better than we anticipated so far. So just briefly, I'm gonna highlight our enterprise funds, our water and wastewater funds. So our water funds, revenues in the water funds remain stable and easy to project, as ratepayers have not seen a rate increase since fiscal year 2010-2011, and revenues are only increasing as additional connections are made. The water fund is projected to have operational savings of a little less, moving down here to $88,000, and that is mainly due to salary savings. We've had a number of vacancies in the water division so far this year. And so that does leave us still with a $293,000 deficit. But as has been discussed at previous budget meetings, the $465,000 amount here from projects is paid out of our water fund capital reserve funds. So if we kind of take that number out, we're seeing about $170,000 surplus for our water fund operations. For wastewater, it's a pretty similar story. Again, we haven't seen rate increases for our wastewater fees for over 10 years. So those are remaining pretty stable. We do see some pretty good operation savings in the wastewater division as well. And that again is due to a number of vacancies in the wastewater division. And so again, coming down to the bottom line, a little bit of a deficit, $329,000, but the projects, again, just like the water fund, the projects are paid out of our wastewater capital reserves. And right now those are over, has a balance of over $9 million. So if we take that out, we're at about a $450,000 surplus in the wastewater fund. So to conclude the mid-year budget presentation today, I just kind of want to review our upcoming steps in the fiscal year 2022-23 budget preparation. And so we're going to be meeting with the Measure E committee on March 15th, and it's going to be for our departments to present their proposed projects to the Measure E committee. In January, we had the Measure Committee held an open meeting for the public to come to attend, and they gathered their kind of the public's ideas on how Measure E funds should be spent. So we'll combine those with the department's projects. And then we'll come back on April 5th, and the Measure E Committee will kind of put together their final recommendations for funding to be included in the proposed budget. And then in late April, we'll have our first special council meeting to have a proposed budget workshop. And then if need be, we'll have a second follow-up one probably around early May to go over any outstanding questions and to go over the enterprise funds. And then hopefully in June of 2022, we'll adopt our final budget. And that concludes my presentation tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions with the council.
Thank you, Aaron. Does anyone have questions for Aaron on anything he presented or any of the reports that are in our packet? Mike Ossie?
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. On your expenditure report on page 6, let me get to it myself here. It's on page 7 under the general fund revenue detail. Do you see that, Aaron?
Yes.
My question is with interest income, 1920 actual interest was 183,737. Actual 2021 was 16, and then budgeted at 25. I'm just curious why the difference, and I think we've talked about that before. Yep, that right there.
Yeah. So yeah, you can see a sharp decline in our investments. So the first thing I'll say in regards to our interest income is that it follows the federal funds rate pretty closely. And so as you guys may have been following, that funds rate has gone down significantly over the past year or two. So that's kind of the first, I guess, key contributor to why it was declining. And so I guess our total portfolio in the past, or 2 or 3 years ago would bring in closer to 3%, and now we're currently today we're closer to 0.5%. So a pretty big decline as far as what we're able to earn with our investments. And then the second thing, the reason why that is such a large difference is there's a government accounting standards board statement on how to account for interest. And so you account for interest based on kind of the, what you can sell your investments at currently. And so as the funds rates go down, obviously you can sell your investments for less. And so they actually become more valuable. And so in 1920, our investments were kind of, I guess, more valuable because we were earning 3% or 2 to 3% on a lot of our investments. And when people could only go out and get, say, 0.5% or a 1% certificate of deposit at the time. So hopefully that helped answer your question.
Okay. And for the most largest portion of the income or interest income, is that with the county aggregate fund?
Yeah, so we have an investment statement that kind of directs us how to invest. So we have approximately, we can do up to a third with the county pool, and we have roughly that a third with Edward Jones through certificates of deposits, and then a third through what's called LAIF, which is essentially the state investment pool.
Okay. And across the board, are they all pretty well down?
They are all down, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Edward Jones is Heckwood. We work with Heck. He's been calling me periodically, and I mean they're at 0.1% sometimes, and we're like, that's not too great. So
No.
yeah, it's rough right now.
Okay. Thank you. And then on page 24,
Yep.
Hold on, I'll get there myself. And under the overtime, it's account 5170. 1920 actual overtime was 226. 2021 actual 254. And for currently year to date up to December 125, I'm thinking that that's probably going to be a little bit low. The 160 that is budgeted for the overtime.
Yep. So you can see here we're estimating 250,000, which would be about double where they're at so far this year. And what I'll say is when we're kind of going through our budget, we don't take into account vacancies. And so a lot of the time when we have vacancies, we see some salary and benefit savings. And so we'll move those into the overtime, because obviously those positions need to be covered with overtime if we don't have a regular full-time employee working. So I would say the reason for that $90,000 increase in overtime is strictly due to being short 1 to 2 officers throughout just about the entire fiscal year so far.
Okay. Hopefully we can cure that in the next year or so. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions for Aaron? Do we have any public on here that might want to ask questions? I don't see any hands raised. If anyone from the public would like to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand or call in. So Aaron, with that, I think we're good. Appreciate your time and the update. It always feels good to know where we're at, whether it's good or bad. All right, we will open oral comments from the public. There should be a number on your screen to call if you would like to address the council. And while we are waiting to see if anyone calls in, we will move on to the 5 items that are on our consent calendar, which includes city council minutes from January 18th, report of disbursements, authorization for the city manager to continue teleconference public meetings for city council and all city committees, commissions, and boards pursuant to Assembly Bill 361, Resolution 2021-32. Approval, a renewal of the memorandum of understanding with Bird Rides, and approve a professional services contract task order for the stormwater hazard identification project. Does anyone wish to pull any of those items?
I'd like to pull, what is it? D.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would like to pull B as a boy, please.
Anyone else? All right, Mike Losi, what is your comment on B?
Let me find it here real quick. It's a general question. Why are we contracting with Mad River Hospital for employee physicals, for employment physicals?
Mike, our city clerk and human resources director can provide you with an answer with that one.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Losi. We use Mad River Hospital currently for employee pre-employment physicals because the environmental and occupational health office that we used previously closed a year and a half ago. So Mad River is the only place that currently offers pre-employment physicals.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it, Mike? Okay, Mike Johnson.
I would just like to ask if there's an estimated time when we will, if they plan on bringing some of the scooters back to Fortuna. It says in the future. I just wondered if they had said anything to Merritt or anybody regarding a timeline.
Yeah, Councilmember Johnson, I did talk to Garrett Gronowski, the project manager for that project. And I know initially they had some trouble getting a fleet manager, but we do not have a specific timeline. I asked for an update, so I can email that when I get it, but he hasn't given us an update of when we can expect to see them again. But my expectation is that we'd extend this agreement through the end of this year. And again, thinking of it as kind of a trial period because we really didn't see them rolled out for any significant length of time. I'm guessing that it may be.
No, but I do get a lot of comments and people looking forward to seeing him back.
I will follow up and let them know. I think they know we're anxious. We've been very supportive, so I think it's more just a management issue on their end.
All right, thank you.
All right, there are no other questions. We can entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we adopt the consent calendar items A through E.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Sienna?
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Losi,
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. All right, moving on to our public comments. I don't think we have anyone with a hand raised and no calls, Sienna.
No, I don't see any additional members from the public or hands raised.
All right, we will close oral comments and move on to City Council Business Item A which is to authorize a $1,540,000 supplemental budget request for an additional discretionary payment to the California Public Employees Retirement System, CalPERS Pension Trust. Staff report, please.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Council and Mayor and City Council. So I'm going to share my screen once again. Tonight is finance night, I suppose. So as I reviewed just in the mid-year budget report, we did have a very nice surplus for this last fiscal year, 2020-2021. And so I want to kind of give a recommendation to the City Council on how to best use those funds. And so my recommendation would be to use those excess funds to pay down the city's unfunded liability through CalPERS. And just as a way of kind of some history, our goals in managing our unfunded liability has been to be proactive. We've been able to be successful in that. We've made 2 additional discretionary payments over the last few years. We want to smooth future mandated unfunded liability payments, and we want to incorporate information gathered from this presentation and from this information when making future fiscal and budget decisions. So I'm just going to jump right into it. This is where the City of Fortuna is currently at with our unfunded liabilities. So you can see right here, I guess this is where I would start. Just a little bit over $11 million is where the City of Fortuna's unfunded liability is currently. I do include kind of 2 other sections. And so over the past 20 years, CalPERS has earned an average of 5.5%. So that is less than the 7.15% that they expect to earn each year. But this is kind of, again, what they expect to earn. And so if they do continue to earn this year after year, the city would be responsible for paying down $11 million in outstanding liability. Now, if CalPERS continues to come in, at less than the 7.15%, let's say 6.15%, the city would actually, be responsible to pay $16.5 million in unfunded liability. Kind of, I guess, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if somehow CalPERS starts having some really good years and they outperform their discount rate over the next 20, 30 years, then the amount that the city would owe would be only $6.5 million. So I just kind of give this to kind of give the full breadth, anywhere from 6.5 to 16.5 is kind of, what the city still has to pay. So also about 70% of the unfunded liability is attributable to the general fund. So that translates to about 7.7 million. And we use the general fund often as kind of our limiting factor because that is the most difficult fund to get revenues into. So just to review some pension fund stability initiatives that have come down over the last 10 years or so through the state. In November of 2012, the California voters passed the Public Employees Pension Reform Act, or PEPRA, and that provided that new employees hired after January 1st are required to contribute more to their pensions and must also work longer before they can retire and begin to receive the benefits promised to their employers. So just going back, that's kind of where this comes into play. 99.8% of the unfunded liability is for employees before this Public Employees Pension Reform Act went into place. So a large majority of it is from our we call classic employees, or employees that were hired before January 1st, 2013. So I guess the good news for this is that the PEPRA is working for all newly hired employees, and it's not creating additional unfunded liabilities at this point. The city just has to focus on paying kind of the previous unfunded liabilities, and then once those are paid off, we should be in good shape moving forward. The expected rate of return on the pension fund's investments, referred to as the discount rate, was reduced from 7.75% to 7.5%, starting in fiscal year 2014-15. And then again in December 2016, CalPERS voted to lower it in increments from 7.5% to 7%. And so again, just I guess going back to this slide, they've only been averaging 5.5% over the last 20 years. So even reducing it down to 7% is probably a little bit aggressive. CalPERS has changed the amortization period from 30 years to 20 years for new pension liabilities. And then most recently, the investment returns for fiscal year 2021, since they were 21%, it triggered an automatic reduction in the discount rate. So it lowered it even further from 7% to 6.8% moving forward. And the theory there is that with such a big increase in 1 year, they don't expect the market to continue to do that, and they expect a little bit of a pullback or flattening. So we won't see that in the numbers that I'm going to present today. Those take a couple years before they start showing up in our unfunded liability numbers. But here is our future estimated unfunded liability payments. The $698,000 one is a payment that we made earlier this fiscal year. And you can see it just kind of go up 100,000, 100,000, almost 100,000, just as we go along. And then in fiscal year 31-32, this is the peak payment, $1.3 million. So 600,000 more than what we paid this year in just 10 years is a pretty significant amount to have to come up with if the city does not make any additional discretionary payments from now until then. And I did want to point out, last year, the city council authorized a $255,000 additional discretionary payment, and that did in fact lower it by approximately $30,000. So we are seeing some benefits to making those payments from years past. So staff recommends making the additional discretionary payment to achieve the goals that we outlined earlier in this presentation. Council approved an additional discretionary payment in fiscal year 18-19 for $305,000, and that resulted in estimated savings of about $274,000 in interest payments. And council approved the second additional discretionary payment in fiscal year 2020-21 for $255,000, and that payment resulted in about $276,000 in interest payment savings. So I guess a common way to think about this strategy is it's like paying more on your home mortgage, which results in considerable interest savings as you go along. And so staff is recommending a very significant additional discretionary payment of $1,540,000 in fiscal year 21-22. And this would result in estimated savings to the city of $1.75 million. So here is a graph of if we made that payment today, what it would do to our future payments over the next 20 plus years. And you can see it brings it down pretty significantly. Each year it brings down our peak year here from 1.3 million down to about 1.1 million. So roughly $200,000 which will go a long ways towards the city being able to afford that 10 years from now. So to conclude, the city budgeted for the mandatory unfunded liability payment of $791,000. Staff is recommending making an additional payment of $1.54 million, which would require supplemental budget adjustment to be done. And the allocation between funds is shown in this table below. So if we add up this 358,000 almost, plus the 42,000 here, plus the 341,000, the 57,000, and then we include building, River Lodge and streets, since the general fund supports those funds, that would be, we would have enough with our fiscal year 2021 surplus monies to make this payment, just based on those surplus monies that we had. So I am happy to answer any questions or go back to any slides if you guys would like to see anything in depth. But at this point, this concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Aaron. So I'm trying to figure out from your chart that shows the 21-22 payment of the 1,540,000, and then the bottom line, the total savings of 1,757,000. So the difference is only $200 and some thousand. Does that mean if we pay $1.5 million now, if we don't pay $1.5 million now, we will only pay $1.7 million later over the year?
So if we pay $1.5 million now, we're saving not only that $1.5 million, but we're saving an additional $1.75 million. So we would be saving essentially $3.2 million. Yeah.
Okay, I was trying to, sort that out in my mind and it wasn't clicking. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I was thinking 200,000 to give up that much money didn't seem worth it. Got it.
No.
All right, does anyone else have any questions for Aaron?
Yeah,
Okay, I've got Mike Johnson and then Mike Losi.
so I remember reading someplace in a discussion board on this issue and other people prepaying as they could to save and act prudently. And they had to discuss this with CalPERS before they could implement it. And is that something that we've done? Is that something that has to be done?
Yeah, so in order to, I guess, the way that I was able to put all this information together was I had to set up a meeting with our CalPERS actuary. And I've done that each year for the last few years, and they'll go through some pretty complicated actuarial studies and put it into a more comprehensive spreadsheet that I can use to then kind of play around with some scenarios. And so, yes, that is correct, Councilmember Johnson. You do have to set up a meeting with a CalPERS actuary to go over a number of things before you're allowed to make those additional discretionary payments. But we have gone through that process.
Well, thank you for your attention and prudence in this. And it's nice to see that we're working with a plan to reduce this. So thank you.
Mike Losi.
Thank you. Aaron, can we go through some of the risks that are outlined on page 4 of 6?
Yeah, yes, and you're talking about the staff report, correct?
On your staff report, the primary drawbacks to making additional contributions. City has less flexibility. Can you explain why that would be?
Yes, so that is really, we have less flexibility because we're giving the funds to PERS. So, if we held on to those funds, we could invest them in Edward Jones, we could invest them in Leif, we could invest them in some of these other, investment options that we have. But the reason we are recommending giving it to PERS is because they have a wider range of investment options available to them that we do not have the ability to invest in. And seeing as though our investment returns as of late have been close to 1%, it seems prudent to go ahead and give it to PERS and let them invest it in some of their, wider range of investment classes that they can invest in.
Okay. And the next one is kind of, it sounds like a real risk. Future assets in excess of the liability, should they occur, will not be refunded back to the city. So if we pay more than we owe, they keep it?
Yes, and this is one of the big reasons why you guys may have seen a letter from the Government Finance Officers Association to not issue bonds and pay down the entire amount in full, because they won't refund it to you, but you do get credit for it. So let's say you do end up making more, they would give you credit for it. So you'd be 110% funded, you'd be super funded. And then if you ever needed to, if there was ever a deficit in some future years, you wouldn't have to pay it because they would use your credit towards it. So that's the first piece. And then the second piece, one of the reasons why I showed, go up to it, this screen was just to kind of point out, if we make that $1.5 million payment, even if PERS has an 8% increase, that 1.5, that's only going to bring it down to 4 million. And so I think, we're still going to be well below, coming close to being 100% funded, even with this additional payment.
Okay, it's just I think this is probably the largest additional payment that we've made. I mean, that I can ever remember. So, and then if you could talk about the final bullet point there, the future city councils may not view the discretionary payments.
Yeah, so this was, this has kind of been something that we started a few years ago. And I guess as city councils turnover, I know the League of California Cities has made it a big point to, send out letters to council members, letting them know of this issue. But it could become something that future city councils prefer to put money towards, parks projects or some certain other projects, and don't, prioritize paying down the additional, pay down the unfunded liability. So I just put that in there to kind of say, I think doing more now is important, just in case future city councils don't prioritize paying down the debt that the city has.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Tammy.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. These additional payments, we're not paying this off early. We're just making our future payments less, and in the long run, paying less interest. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're essentially paying, our outstanding debt sooner, so we're having to pay less interest on it, essentially, because we made those payments early.
So will we be making the same amount of years payment, but just less each year, or are we
Correct.
actually?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Aaron? I don't see any of our participants on here. Anyone from the public have any questions? I don't, any hands? Oh, Jeremy. Sorry, Jeremy.
That's okay. I just raised. So does it feel a little premature to anybody else that we're doing this before we finalize our budget or finish our negotiations in closed session? Shouldn't we table this for a specific dollar amount until we've done that? Or am I talking apples and oranges?
I don't know if Aaron, you want to answer, but this is really using the surplus from last year, not looking forward to next year's budget. So this is what we're expecting to close with a surplus, use that surplus from last year. So what we're not looking at is, we're not really looking at next year. So to answer your question, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add that this is we're using monies that's already in the bank. So we've already got this surplus monies that's already in our bank account. So now we're recommending how to use it. And the benefit to doing this now, even looking at next year's budget, is that it's going to lower our unfunded liability payment by about $100,000. So we'll have an extra $100,000 in next year's budget if we use these surplus funds from last fiscal year that we already have in our bank account on making this additional payment.
And how much can we gauge savings every year after that? That 100,000 next year, what about the second year?
So it kind of tiers up. And so this chart really shows it the best. So it kind of goes up, and then here, kind of towards the peak, we're almost at $200,000 a year in savings. So from about 100,000 up to 200,000, and then it starts going kind of becoming less again as we get into the later years. But
and so this chart does not show the previous discretionary payments that we've made.
it includes, yeah. So the green chart here includes the additional payments that we've already made. So if I had taken those out, the green would be even higher.
Okay. Thank you.
Aaron, didn't you update this based on information from the CalPERS actuary? So these are numbers that Aaron's reviewed with the actuary. Should we make that additional discretionary payment?
Correct. Yeah.
But going back to Jeremy's question, this is for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. Is that correct?
We would be making the payment in this fiscal year, but we would be using funds that surplus funds from June of 2021.
Okay. Does that make sense, Jeremy?
It makes sense. I just don't know if it still, I mean, I don't know how much we can talk about the negotiations, but if we chose to adopt a budget that was slightly in the red, do we make a payment of 1.5 million and take that 40,000 and stay in the black? Or that's my question, is like, are we doing this before we finalize, even though it's surplus money from 2021, if it's in the reserves, it's available to us. So I just want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up in the future for budgets that don't balance based on tonight's choice.
Yeah, well, if I may just add a couple items, I would say the first thing is that this is only going to help our future budgets because it's going to lower the mandated payment that we were forced to make each year by over $100,000 for next year. And two, it's never, as finance director, I could never recommend using reserves to kind of, plug into your budget for ongoing expenses. So I don't think we ever want to look at our reserves as a way to balance our budget in future years.
And we're not expecting to have to do that this coming fiscal year.
However, how much of a chunk does this take out of what we have in reserves right now?
So we currently have a little over 6 million. So this would bring it down to a little over 5 million. And I can bring up last year's budget, which kind of shows it, and I could have so
And the total payment is not just general funds. It's a combination of general funds and enterprise. So we're not talking about the entire payment coming from general fund.
So,
Right.
Here was 1920 actual ending 5.25. As I went through, we estimated this was last year's budget having $141,000 surplus. We actually had almost 900,000. So we're at a little over 6 million, and we thought we would be at 5.4. So it brings us back down to kind of where we thought we would be at during last budget cycle. And so you can see here kind of our reserve policy, $400,000 or so for economic contingency, for economic downturn events, $500,000 set aside for capital improvement infrastructure reserves, 4 million, a little over 4 million for operating working capital reserves. So we like to have 5 million And then anything above that is just kind of icing on the cake. So we would still be above, where we would ideally like to be at.
Mike Johnson, you have your hand up again. You're muted, Mike.
This does not affect our council mandated reserve policy of having 6 months operating capital and a capital outlay money for a catastrophic failure. This still maintains that policy, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And then we have freeboard above that. So we're not actually encroaching into that territory. We still have a reserves above that level also.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? I don't see any hands up. Anyone call in, Sienna? Nope, okay, we'll close public comment on this item. And is anyone ready to make a motion?
I will move to authorize the city manager to execute a supplemental budget request to make an additional discretionary payment in the amount of $1,540,000 to be paid to the CalPERS Pension Trust to recognize interest payment savings.
And I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Sienna?
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Losi,
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. All right, thank you. Moving on to our next business item, a supplemental budget request to develop a project study report for the Kenmar and Ross Hill Road Intersection Improvement Project. Staff
Thank you, Mayor.
report.
Thank you, Mayor Long. I'll be presenting the staff report. I have a very brief PowerPoint presentation I'd like to share with the council. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the item, staff is recommending that the council approve a supplemental budget request to complete a project study report for the intersection at Kenmar and Ross Hill Road and South Fortuna Boulevard. This is just a location map showing where that portion of the project is. You can see in the lower right, the pink circle is over that intersection. And with regards to summary, the Kenmar Ross Hill Road intersection is an intersection, has a lot of accidents at it relative to other intersections in the city. Additionally, it's not expected to be able to meet the necessary level of service with the city's planned growth as forecasted in the city's general plan and the modeling that was done for that. The general plan completed in 2010. And then there's also additional projects that may necessitate the need for improving this intersection sooner. And just to support those things, this is a graphic, a heat map from the local roads and safety plan that we recently completed. And I just want to point out, you can see that the darker the color, the more accidents. And you can see there's a number of intersections that have relatively high accident rates in the city of Fortuna, but this is one of the intersections with the most accidents. And with regards to the level of service on the left in that table, you can see this is a table that was the existing conditions when we completed the 12th Street interchange project and the traffic counts were done. And you can see that the level of service was a level of service B. So that it's like school grades A through F, anything up to a C is passing. And after that, you're below. You can see in the projected condition in 2030 that intersection is intended to go to a level of service F. There's a number of potential projects in the city's future. There's a proposed development of the mill site that would contribute a significant amount of traffic to that intersection. We're also working on the design and permitting and hope to find construction funding for the Kenmar 101 interchange. So it'll be important to have some of the roadway geometry so we can plan for how both of those would interact. Right now, we have a lot more information on the Kenmar interchange and a lot less information on the Kenmar Ross Hill Road, South Fortuna Boulevard intersection. So we want to make sure that we don't miss something and just move the problem from one intersection to another or the interchange to the Kenmar Ross Hill Road. South Fortuna Boulevard intersection. Both those projects will benefit from the understanding that would come from this project, including the project footprint, the traffic forecasts and projections, and then also cost estimates. It'll be important to know how much these projects will cost and how we'll be able to fund those, or potentially include an impact fee or mitigation measures for developments that have significantly impact that intersection. Some of the outcomes that we hope to have by completing the project study report will be to identify the cost, project alternatives, what they cost, what the right-of-way needs are, and other permitting information. If this is approved by the council tonight, we expect to be complete with the project in July. And again, it would allow the city to seek funding and identify potential mitigation measures. The estimated cost of the project study report is $44,000. It would be completed under the city's on-call contract using GHD, one of the engineering contractors we have an on-call contract with. The funds would come from Fund 140, the citywide traffic impact fee. One thing to note, we had a couple of projects, the Redwood Way paving project, which came in $80,000 under budget. So we're doing really well and haven't had to use these traffic impact fees that we have in that fund. And there would be a balance of over $300,000, even if this expenditure and budget request is approved by council tonight. So with that, staff's recommendation is that the council approve the supplemental budget request to develop the project study report for Kenmore and Ross Hill Road intersection improvement project.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll open public comment. And does anyone from the council have any questions?
What are we looking at in the study and doing the PSR? Is that to look at alternatives? Do we have something in mind already? Maybe a possible solution we're looking to implement?
You know, I think we one of the alternatives is a roundabout. I know that. Another one is, would be improving the existing signalized intersection. Those are typically the two that you'd have, including the geometry that may be required, including extending or lengthening turn lanes, things like that. So we don't have anything in mind right now. And that's what the project study report would do, is basically identify what that project is. There's a scope of work that's attached to the staff report that has a specific task that GHD would be doing, including the surveying, the traffic modeling, the conceptual design piece, the cost estimating, and it details all of those steps that would be taken to complete the project study report, as well as a preliminary environmental analysis as well.
Yeah, I would know that the intersection was signalized almost 30 years ago. So there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, and I will just say that we're working on the most difficult intersections that the city has and the most costly right now. We received almost $1 million, and we have a Caltrans contribution on the 12th and Kenmar interchange. We recently were awarded funding to work on the 12th Street and 101 interchange. So we're trying to pick off the most constricting, most likely to end up at an unacceptable level of service. And I could go back to the table if you wanted to see, but the most glaring ones are the 12th Street interchange, 12th Street 101, Kenmar 101, and the South Fortuna Boulevard, Ross Hill Road, Kenmore. So we're trying to go after the bad ones. And our hope is to stay ahead of those impacts that we're expecting to happen with the planned growth of the city.
Yeah, that's you can't really improve Kenmar 101 without improving Newburgh and Ross Hill Road, Fortuna Boulevard, Kenmar, improving that. Otherwise, the improvements are choked if we do anything else.
Right. We'll just push them to the next intersection. And we want to make sure to really have a comprehensive view of what's needed. That way, if we are seeking federal funding and we can get some of this Build Back Better money to come our way, that we really can include both projects and not just pursue the one that we have information for.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important issues here now, with interest at the old mill site, to show whether it's feds or the state that we want to develop everything that's going on with the interchange, but also the other infrastructure that would get bottlenecked if we don't do something like this.
Exactly.
Any other questions from council? I don't see anyone from the public with hands raised. No phone calls, Yana?
No,
All right, we'll close public comment.
I'd make a motion, we approve a supplemental budget request in the amount of $44,000 to develop a project study report for Kenmar and Ross Hill Road intersection improvement project.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Sienna?
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Losi,
Yes,
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. All right, thank you. Moving on to city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Long. I'm going to try this in a visual format today, and if it doesn't work and you guys prefer just a verbal report, I'd be happy to continue doing it that way. So with that, here we go. First, I wanted to review our upcoming meeting schedule. Our next council meeting is on February 22nd at 6:00 p.m. That'll be on the Zoom platform. Our next planning commission meeting will be on February 8th, which is actually before the next council meeting at 6:00 p.m. Our next Measure E meeting will be on March 15th. And then our next Roanoke Community Recreation and Park District meeting will be on March 2nd. And again, if anybody wants to find those agendas, they can look on the city website under your government and pull down the council tab or the commissions and look for those agendas there. The council had asked that I provide an update on the status of the police facility. This is intended to be a brief update. If you want more information, you want to see more detail on the plans, I'd be happy to provide that later. Here's what I have to tell you. I received some updated information from the consultant. It includes a project cost estimate. The current estimate is at $1.74 million. That includes a 20% contingency. So I'm hopeful that their estimating is accurate. It's a very difficult bid climate, but as the council knows, we have $2 million budgeted for that project. So far, we're not seeing anything that's raising alarms or that would expect us to need more money to be able to complete this project than we currently have budgeted. The consultant expects to have the project completed, the bid set completed in March, and to have a 30-day bid period. Once we need a little bit additional time for council approval and award, so it would be at least 45 days until we could, from the advertisement for bid, before we could award a construction contract. We're assuming that would be able to happen in May. It's really a lot of contractors are very busy. There's materials delays, but we expect that this project could be completed in less than 1 year. So that's the update on the police facility. I just wanted to provide an update to the council. I went down last Tuesday through Friday to the League of California City Manager Conference in Monterey. There was a number of really good and relevant presentations for the city, some of which included updates on strategies for fees, assessments, and then the different types of financing districts. And it's particularly relevant. We're looking at different financing districts for different financing types for the Roanoke Community Recreation District and helping the district consider how to raise funds for that. I also saw some pretty interesting presentations on how other cities are housing the homeless and what the lessons learned, including some regional efforts where, the shelter would be located in one city and a proportional share would be paid for by the whole region. And then also received the California state and local economic and fiscal outlook. So those weren't all of them, but those were some that were particularly useful. And I may be bringing some more information back to staff and council on some of the things I learned at that conference. Just a quick update on negotiations. I don't know if I've gotten back to the entire council, but we presented the offers that were authorized to extend to the bargaining units. Both the bargaining units approved, and we plan to have those at the next council meeting on February 22nd. So that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just a reminder that the next council meeting is a Tuesday,
Yes.
February 22nd.
So President's Day is on Monday.
Anyone have any questions for Merritt? All right, seeing none, future agenda items that we haven't discussed before? Anything new?
I'd like to see about going along with the local road safety plan, the improvements on 12th Street and 101, Kenmar and 101, and now the project study report for the Ross Hill Road, Fortuna Boulevard, Kenmar intersection. The Vision Zero Humboldt County Traffic Safety Task Force being part of that. And they have a resolution that outlines, I have it someplace on my computer, but I don't have it available right this minute. But I'd like to get some information and bring it up and see about that.
Okay, Merritt, you got that? Okay. All right, city council reports. Mike Johnson.
Well, it's been, seems like crazy busy for some reason, but a couple of things. I had a historical commission meeting and was asked to bring thanks to the council for enabling the museum to remain open as much as it has in the midst of this crazy last year. They've had a lot of visitors from all over the United States, and they're proud, and I'm proud of what they've been able to do and the way it's been able to be taken care of. And they just asked to express thanks to the council for what they've done for support. So I wanted to say that because I always forget stuff. So I put that first. Moving on from there, the HCOG meeting I had, we had a heck of a year. We adopted the Vision Zero proclamation at the Humboldt County Association of Governments level. And looking back at our executive director put together a highlight of the year, but just in this one meeting, adopting the local transportation funds for Riedel and Humboldt County, adopted the regional transportation plan update, and then part of the RTIP, the regional transportation improvement plan, was $1 million for an engineering and design study for the 12th Street 101 interchange area that Merritt was just talking about, as part of the tackling the tough nuts to crack in our roadway system, especially with the freeway being a major choke point in the middle. And part of the highlights for the entire year, over the course of the year, HCOG has overseen $8.9 million in disbursements to local transportation, and in some cases, housing grants, regional early action planning grants. They have administered some money for the state of good repair road work and the low carbon transit operations plan for HTA. Has accomplished the 5311 bus program, another 850,000. So, and the local coronavirus response and relief supplemental appropriations act, 780,000. So overseeing a lot of things lately in the last few years, HCOG has had to take a larger role on in the housing area. So it just, things just, they never get smaller, they just get bigger. And our executive director has done an excellent job in taking on these things and bringing them to the board, and with the local tax, the SS TAC, the social services TAC area, the technical advisory committee for roads, bridges, and tackling these things and bringing them through. And her evaluation, did that at the last meeting also. So those are just some of the highlights of what HCOG has done. And then the last thing, at the last meeting, I was reelected to chair for this year. So that's another thing that I'll be taking on and look forward to growing and helping to bring things for each community in Humboldt County. As Mike was gone, I took on his role at the RCEA board meeting as his alternate. And at that meeting, one of the first things also was the election of a new chair, Stephen Avis, vice chair, Chris Curran, and a variety of things, ensuring financial and energy resources, stability, rural energy network, which will bring more programs to Humboldt County as well as Mendocino and Lake County. And it's RCEA is reimbursed in the funding section of that Renew network. And the last thing was I had a meeting with myself. Well, not myself. I didn't initiate it. Jared Huffman had a meeting and invited Humboldt County, the HCOG executive director, myself, Greg Pratt with HTA, and Tom Madsen, as well as people from Del Norte and Mendocino counties. And we discussed how the new infrastructure program is going to affect Humboldt County and the other various counties, as well as the state. So we're looking at $25.7 billion over 5 years coming to the state. Out of that, 45% of that is for local government. So the rest of it goes to Caltrans and is spent throughout the state. They have a spending plan for that. And there was, during that meeting, the guidebooks for the federal portion and the state. So the Infrastructure Act guidebook on the federal level was released, as well as the CALSTA, California State Transportation Authority portion was released. And first thing I did was during the meeting was forward them to Merritt and Brendan, so we can get in as quick as possible to make sure we get our share. And that's all I have for right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Losey.
Thank you. And Mike, before I forget, I want to thank you for filling in on that RCEA meeting. I appreciate that very much. So I didn't have to come back from my vacation.
You earned it. You earned the vacation.
Thank you. On the 19th of last month, we had a LAFCO meeting, and we completed the Manila Community Services District Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence Review. It was probably one of the most detailed MSRs I've ever seen, primarily because of the location of the community being so near the ocean and the bay, and so few ways in and out of Manila, that the staff and commissioners examined many different issues that most communities just don't contend with, that Manila does contend with and will have to contend with if there's ever a major earthquake, tsunami, flood, you name it. We discussed expiring commissioner terms, and I'm sad to say that long-term Commissioner Skip Jorgensen, who is the alternate public member, is not going to reapply. And I just want to shout out to Skip for his hard work and many years of service to Humboldt County, being on LAFCO. It was a help to a lot of us that he was on when the first term when I was on LAFCO, I think it was 2012. So he's been there for quite some time. And then we received updates on the upcoming MSRs and countywide proposals, including the Eel River Valley Fire Department's shared services options with basically all the fire departments within the Eel River Valley. On a different note, I want to congratulate Jeff Durham. He's one of the owners of the Redwood Riverwalk Motel located over on Alomar Way in the Riverwalk area. There's a national trade publication called Hotels. And they had a really nice write-up about how Redwood Riverwalk Motel has bucked the trend of losing employees during COVID and how they've taken the extra steps to provide for their employees. And as a result, over the last 2 years, they've had a very low turnover rate. That's unheard of during this COVID, the last 2 COVID years. So congratulations to Jeff and Redwood Riverwalk Motel. And I want to thank Renee for including that on the chamber bulletin. So we do appreciate that information. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mike. I think that you should thank Mike Johnson again because you didn't end up being the chair.
Thank you so much.
You were there. That's what happened.
I do appreciate that too. Yeah, that has
I
a
held
way
my
of happening.
tongue. I held my tongue. I didn't do that while you were gone.
Thank you.
All right, Jeremy.
I was gonna start my report with that. You trust
Oh.
that man a lot. That's usually what happens when you miss the meeting for elections. I wanted to report real quickly. It was posted today on social media. I reposted it and so did several other community members, but for the week of President's Week, the parks will have President's Week break camp Tuesday through Friday. Monday is a holiday and they will not be open on Monday, the 21st, but they will have kids camp Tuesday the 22nd through that Friday. So please contact the Parks office at 707-725-7620 if you'd like to enroll your child in that program during the week of the Christmas, how about President's break? And then real quick on FBID, I wanted to let you all know that FBID held a special meeting last week and voted to recommend Amanda Phillips to the city council as an appointment for our board. We have two members of the public that audited our last meeting, our last regularly scheduled meeting, and one of them has raised their hand in the volunteer position. So I'm sure the mayor will have a chance to review her application and interview her, but the board felt like she'd be a good fit for our group to support the businesses of the Fortuna Business Improvement District moving forward. We still have 2 vacancies. You can go to our website or to the city, I believe the city website, and ask for an application to be a member of that committee. And I'm grateful for the enthusiasm of 2 new volunteers that wanted to kind of check it out and see what they'd be walking into if they were to get involved. Our regular business meeting is this Thursday at 2 p.m. All are invited. It's via Zoom. And we'll be discussing the downtown banners and the inventory of our banners. We'll be discussing with our new executive director, asking her how she's doing on helping to catch up with admin tasks, updating. Oh, and she's been updating our database with business emails, phone numbers, and the most recent additions to our local business community. And one other thing that between the chamber and FBID they're doing here recently is creating a database of available storefronts. So if anybody has a need for available commercial space or other needs, please contact FBID or the chamber, because we're kind of working collaboratively on that with the chamber's efforts regarding the consultant for retail strategies. So between the 2 of them, they're going to get you hooked up with whatever you need available space. Like I said before, we still have a couple of seats open, one for Strongs Creek and one for a citywide seat. We'd love anybody that has interest in business or management in either of those areas to please go to our website at fortunabusiness.com and apply to be part of this group. I'll get a report from our new executive director on Thursday, and I'll report back to how she's fitting in and the launch that she's taken to bring FBID back to a full operational entity. I saw her the day after she started, and it was funny. I said, "How's it going over there?" And she says, "I turned on the computers after it's been off for about 6 months, and I spent the next 4 hours updating." So the next day she was much more productive, but the first day was just getting things back online. So I'm looking forward to hearing her progress. I do notice that we have a couple of our board members on the Zoom meeting tonight, and I just want to thank them for their involvement and their dedication through this transition. Other than that, one last thing I'd like to just shout out to our Fortuna Volunteer Fire Department. I had the honor to be at their annual dinner, and there were several award winners, but the one that sticks out is their Firefighter of the Year, Frank Dorr, former city employee. And the amount of hours that those volunteers give to our community is just so unbelievable, that they have a family and small children and a full-time job. And I mean, the numbers that were coming out of there in their presentation, there was 15 people that had anywhere from 800 to 1,300 hours of volunteer time last year at the Fortuna Volunteer Fire Department. It's just so impressive, and I just can't thank them enough for everything they're doing. And I love the morale that they have going on over there. What the old chief left and what the new chief is maintaining is bar none, because I'm hearing from other departments that are volunteer units that, no offense to them, I just think Fortuna is rocking it in the morale department, but they're really struggling for membership. And we have 5 companies, almost fully staffed, lots of energy, lots of enthusiasm, lots of volunteer hours, lots of people taking tests for certifications and improving their skills daily. And what a neat group. I mean, it's its own church, if you want to call it something like that. But just the community that they have there is an impressive sight to see. And I was really honored to be at that memorial service, or that honored service.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. Jeremy, did you say we need an FBID rep for Strongs Creek? I was thinking we needed a rep from Redwood Village Mall. Do we have that one now? You're mute.
Sorry, we don't have one for Redwood Village, but we haven't for a while, and we're wondering if we need to just combine Redwood Village and Strongs Creek because of lack of volunteerism. So the message I got from our president was we need a Strongs Creek rep and a citywide rep. We don't have a Redwood Village rep, but I think we've asked everybody that's in the entire mall. So
Have we asked the new business yet?
Lochas?
Because they're local. I'm just wondering. It's just throwing it out there. You don't have to answer me right now.
No, I don't know, but I'll find out on Thursday. I'll report back.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
I called your name. I don't know if you heard me.
Oh, I know I didn't hear you. Are you
Sorry.
talking my name?
Yep, you're up.
Oh, okay, thank you. I had a Humboldt Transit Authority meeting, but I don't have anything to report from that. And I believe I have a public safety meeting, the Cal City's public safety meeting on Friday, but I haven't received an agenda or anything from that yet. And I think that's all I have to report.
All right, thanks, Tammy. Jeremy, thank you for going to the fire department dinner. I had a previous engagement. Mike Johnson had a previous engagement. Mike Losi, I think, was out of town. So it's kind of like, I was kind of cringing, hoping that somebody from the city council was going to end up being there. So thank you for that. I've had a Humboldt Oversight Board meeting, which is the county version of the Redevelopment Oversight Committee. We approved the Fortuna and Eureka ROPS for the next 2 cycles. REDUC, we elected new board members and loan committee. Not too many changes because it's not an election year, so everybody was pretty settled in their positions. I do have a League of California City meeting, like Tammy just mentioned, on Friday from 9 to 12 for the Housing, Community and Economic Committee. Helping coach hot shots on Saturdays, so that's always fun. So, you know, those little kids playing basketball. And there was a thing, I don't know if you guys read the ILG little bulletins that they send out, but they sent out one and talking about how electeds and city councils and all of the different people can't get anything done because they don't agree, and there's all the bickering and all of the things. And they listed some points that in order to be successful and to encourage and model civility, elected leaders can. And as I read through all of the things, I'm going to read them to you because this is us, and I'm so proud of that. Collaborate and operate as a team. Demonstrate honesty and integrity in every action. Prioritize strengthening relationships and building trust. Accept personal responsibility. Focus on civil discourse. Disagree agreeably and professionally. Work for the common good, not personal interests. Attack the problem, never the person. Be open-minded and embrace diverse points of view. Strive for a win-win, work toward consensus and seek common ground. Practice active listening and think about shared values and find common ground. And I thought our council really measures up to those expectations, and I'm proud of us. So, Merritt, you said our groups agreed. Do we still need to have our closed session?
I could just give you an update, but yeah, there's not much more to report. I don't think we need to have the closed session. We'll be bringing it back in open session, but if the council has questions or wants to talk about anything else, we could proceed and keep it. So
What is the consensus of the council? Do we need to have a quick session just to go over everything, or are we good?
Good.
Mike, Tammy, Jeremy, anybody? Good?
I would like 5 minutes just to kind of hear the back and forth and the decision.
Okay. That's fine. I'm fine with that. So 5 minutes, that's it. Okay, so we need a motion to adjourn to closed session where we are going to discuss conference with label negotiators, city negotiators, city manager Merritt Perry, employee organizations or the Fortuna Police Employees Association, the Fortuna Employees Association, and unrepresented / management group in accordance with section 54957.6 of the government code.
I make a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Second,
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn the closed session. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, Sienna will do her magic and fix this up.
Record.